This meeting is being recorded. Hi. It takes a minute or so for our attendees to fill into this Zoom webinar. So I'm going to wait a couple of seconds. If you're here for Alta Live at 5, a rare 5 p.m. happy hour version of Alta Live, you are absolutely in the right place. I hope that you've taken a moment to get yourself a cocktail or whatever you would like to drink. If you have ordered the Alta cocktail kit, now is the time to set that up, get it ready, have your rocks in your fancy appropriate glass for whatever drink we're having. We're going to talk about 3 drinks tonight. And so while the rest of our audience fills in, and I know we're very casual tonight. So if you're late, if you've got to leave early, don't worry. This whole event is being recorded. But I'm going to kick things off with a little housekeeping. Thank you for joining us at Alta Live. This is the digital event series we do at Alta Journal. I'm Beth Spotswood, Alta's digital editor. Today, I am very excited to welcome Alta contributors Michael Bauer and Nicholas Mancall-Bitel, along with Rye on the Road's Greg Lindgren, for a conversation on California-grown spirits. We'll mix, sip, and learn about some of the newest libations coming out of the Golden State. Michael Bauer, if you're unfamiliar, is a James Beard Award-winning restaurant critic, best known for his decades at the helm of the San Francisco Chronicle's food coverage. Nicholas Mancall-Bitel, coming to us from Brooklyn this evening, is an associate editor at Eater. And Greg is co-owner of a number of fabulous San Francisco bars, including Rye, where he is right now. He also runs Rye on the Road, which brings amazing cocktails to all sorts of events. So I'm really excited to welcome the 3 of them. Michael, Nick, and Greg will be in conversation with Alta's editor-at-large, Mary Melton, coming to us from her LA-based tropical lounge in her backyard. Quickly, if you're unfamiliar at all with Alta Journal, we are an award-winning quarterly magazine that aims to celebrate the writers, poets, creators, people who create amazing distilled booze in California, innovators, conservationists, and artists of the West. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I do hope you will check us out at altaonline.com. This conversation will last one, hopefully very happy hour. And throughout it, Greg is going to show us the magic of mixing 3 custom Alta cocktails, all using spirits from California-based distilleries. Please do use the Q&A button to ask questions of our guests. And I'm going to return in a little under an hour. We're going to get to as many of those questions as we can. If there's anything very pressing, I will pop in or DM Mary and we'll get your questions answered. Again, this interview is going to be recorded and posted to altaonline.com. With that, I'm going to get out of the way and turn this over to Mary.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Beth. I'm thrilled to be here with Nick and Michael and Greg and in the Tiki Bar, how to represent Southern California in some sunny outdoor way, and to talk about all the amazing craft distillery work that's coming out of California. Nick wrote a story for our most recent issue of Alta, where we look at the heroes of the next West and what's coming. And he wrote a terrific piece about the future of California spirits. And tonight, as Beth says, we're going to be highlighting a bunch of them. So Greg is going to get us kicked off with an old fashioned. And what we'll do is he'll mix a drink, we'll talk a little bit about it, and then we'll step back and talk about the movement, about the history of drinking and distilleries in California, a little bit about what goes into the beverages. And as Beth said, please feel free to use the Q&A function and pipe in with your questions as we go along, even technical questions, because we've got Greg here, who is truly an expert in this field, and Michael and Nick, who are expert drinkers and writers in this field. So I think we're in a really, really good safe space to learn a lot about cocktails. So Greg, why don't you kick us off with your old fashioned? And yeah, and we'll mute.
Everyone,
there we go.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, we're going to get right into it with an old fashioned. And what's special about this, I think most of us know old fashions. We think of bourbon, but we're going to do a brandy old fashioned, which is the most popular version to do in Wisconsin. I don't know why that is, but I think it's pretty cool. And we're using a California Berthoud brandy to start with here. So we're going to begin by getting our mixing glass here. Everyone can see. And if you've got the bottle, you've got a cocktail from Alta. It's kind of already mixed in that bottle, and it's ready to just go over ice. That's the one. I'm going to put that right there and just borrow a handy jigger. This is going to be 2 ounces of the Bird 2, which is a really lovely brandy, by the way. Enjoyed it a lot. And to that, I'm going to put a couple dashes of the Angostura bitters. Get that in there. And about just a bar spoon of syrup. Get some ice in there. If everyone can see this. And just give that a good stir. Now, if you have your pre-mixed cocktails at home, I see Mary's already got hers in her
ready to
glass.
go. I got it ready to go.
You got a big ice cube too, don't you?
Sure do. I gotta bring it.
All right. That's good and mixed up. I am going to use a big ice cube myself.
Oh, okay. Your ice cube's a lot bigger than mine, but okay, keep going, show off.
Right. Bit too big. And we're just going to get that right in there. Everyone can see that. I'm going to finish that off with just a twist of orange. You guys have some dehydrated citrus, I believe. Give your drink a little aromatic. And there we are. The Brandy Old Fashioned to start off.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, here we go.
That's good. I drink a lot of old fashions, but I don't drink a lot of brand new ones. So this is really special.
All right, so let's start right there, Greg. What is this Wisconsin thing? Do you know anything more about that?
Just bartenders and people from Wisconsin. That's how they make their old fashioned. And the joke is, if you're in Wisconsin and they try and give you a bourbon one, say go back to Chicago in a Wisconsin accent, I think.
Maybe it's because
I'm
of
in California.
So
the Wisconsin cheese.
exactly. Maybe it goes better with that. So Nick, this seems like a good moment to talk a little bit maybe about your article and Berthoud brandy, which is featured in your article, and tell us a little bit about who makes this brandy, and also just why is California having this distillery moment, if we're justified in calling it that?
Sure. Yeah. So Greg, I think as you pointed out in designing this drink, Berthoud is great for mixing with cocktails, and that's really where it came from. It comes from 2 very experienced people in the bar industry. Jeff Bell of Please Don't Tell in New York, and Thomas Pastuzak, whose name I'm sure I butchered, of the Nomad. 2 non-Californians, but they came to the state, worked with some brandy producers, and blended up this delicious brandy. And that, I think, is one great sort of example in a broad spectrum of producers we see making new spirits with the bounty of California. So obviously these are 2 very experienced folks, but you have, a lot of micro distilleries, mom and pop shops. You have, people doing lots of trendy stuff, getting into the non-alcoholic space. And really you have people sort of taking advantage of the fruits and the herbs and the grains that are available to anybody in California, if you just have enough imagination to make them into something delicious. And all of that really exploded in the last 6 or 7 years. Obviously there's been distilling in California for a long time. But since the Craft Spirits Act of 2015, when California really tried to get on board with a number of states that were trying to encourage craft distilling, as a really great moneymaker for states, it's really blown up since then. And unlike those other states, California has, obviously all of these raw materials. It has a big craft brewing scene. Obviously, it has wine country. And these things not only sort of led the way for craft distilling to boom, but also provide a lot of the infrastructure necessary for people to get off the ground. So, you have malt available for grain-based spirits coming out of Admiral Malting up north, or you have White Labs down in San Diego making yeast. So, there's really all of this stuff around to help you. And finally, I know I'm just talking about this, but finally, I think there's something really unique about the spirit of California, sort of this adventurous spirit that we really, mythologize about the state, this adventure, this need to like make new stuff and just constantly do new things.
Well, Michael, you've been writing about food and drink in California for many, many years now, and are experienced at this. Are you surprised by what's emerged in the last few years, and what do you know about the history of the state in terms of, like, as Nick mentions, like there actually is a history? Because I think most people, when they think of California and alcohol, they're going to immediately think wine. Right, for the wine country.
Yeah, I mean, there is. I'm always the history guy that likes to think about, what made something happen, like, why coffee is so big, because Hill Brother, Folgers, and MJB were all headquartered here, which led to the craft coffee movement. And I think it's no different with craft spirits. St. George Spirits was the first in the US to do craft spirits in 1982. And I remember when I came here in 86, one of the first things I did was to taste his pear eau de vie, which was amazing. It smelled like opening up a bushel of fresh pears, with kind of that alcoholic nudge in the center. And, so to me, that's kind of the basis in the history. And it kind of languished for a while. And then it really was in the 90s when it started building up again. And that was more with bartenders. You had like, I think even Greg was one of the early people to do all fresh ingredients in cocktails. So it's just kind of built from that. And so now California has more artisan distilleries than any other place in the US. I think New York is second. And I was trying looking at figures, like how many there are. And I saw that it was like in 2019, it was like 89. But then I read someplace else there was as many as 154. So, it's someplace in that range, but we do have more in California than any other state.
That's incredible. Greg, I'm curious. Well, first of all, Greg, where are you exactly? Let's just unmute Greg for a sec so we know where your location is. Greg is trapped in it.
I'm coming from by. Sorry for the noise. We're in San Francisco in the Tenderloin.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome. And Greg, how do you think that Berthoud brandy, like, how do you think it stands up to the more traditional brandies? Like, how, in terms of, is it a different taste? Like, what?
Yeah. Well, so my experience with brandies in California is like Germain Robin. Also, St. George does make some more eau de vie style brandies, and Argonaut is another one. And the Berthoud's fantastic. This is honestly, it's the first time I've had it, but it's got a lot of depth. It's what I look for is like, you want something that's very mixable for American cocktails, but at the same time, a little bit more like the European, like the French complexity that you find in cognac. And Berthoud really kind of like hits those notes. It's a lot of fun, and it's not overly complex, which kind of is not the best for cocktails when there's too much going on.
Well, Michael noted that you were a leader and early adopter of this fresh ingredients in cocktails. And Michael, I found that interesting. You said it was, I think, 1982 that St. George was established. So about 10 years after Chez Panisse. So I don't know if any of that came out of this kind of California cuisine, movement with this movement toward more fresh ingredients. But Greg, what's your history with that? And have you found a very, were there opening arms early on for these fresh ingredients, or did it take a while for drinkers to get used to things feeling a little fruity?
Yeah, well, we started in the 90s in North Beach at our other spot, 15 Romolo. And when we really caught the bug, I mean, sure, Chez Panisse is definitely, the influence spreads across the state, no matter what, especially here in Northern California. And using quality ingredients is kind of on everyone's mind. But For us, we saw the trend kind of emerging because we're located near a bar that used to exist on Broadway called Enrico's. And Enrico's kind of reintroduced the mojito to to San Francisco, and it kind of spread across the country. And that was really one of the first times that we'd moved out of the 80s and the 90s, where we're making cosmopolitans and vodka tonic and Cape Cods and whatnot, and more into something that has the freshness of the fresh mint that's in that drink. And from there, it was the Bartenders Guild kind of really took hold. It's like a group of enthusiasts, and we just kind of, little by little, we all turned to craft, is what we call it, craft bartending.
Yeah, and cocktails got a lot more complicated, at least it looks like on the surface.
They did. And there's, some great bartenders, like well-known ones like Scott Beatty, based up in Healdsburg, introducing a lot more fresh ingredients into their drinks. And it's like, it adds a lot of fun, a lot of flavor, a lot of beauty to the visual. And I think that in the last decade, we really ran the gamut of that. And now we're seeing a little more restraint. We still want those fresh flavors, but we're not necessarily doing what they call, quote, salad in a glass.
Right. Yeah. And Nick, do you see this? You're in Brooklyn, in New York. Do you see this as the same move toward a little bit more restraint in cocktails?
I think restraint definitely goes alongside just casual, a move towards casual, whatever that means. So, a real embrace of the highball, a real embrace of low ABV, simpler daytime sippers. There's a place for the, very mental, esoteric cocktail, the PDT style, like late night, go worship it at the altar of craft. But I think a lot of people recognize they can't do that every day. So there's a real embrace that it's okay to be knowledgeable and interested in good flavors and just kind of get something a little bit more easygoing.
And I'm just curious too about the demographic shift that we've seen in terms of cocktails in the last 10 years. To age myself, but when I was younger, we drank beer and sometimes had wine from Trader Joe's, and it wasn't a thing. The Scotch and whiskeys and brandies and cognacs and even Chablis, were things that my mom and dad drank, right? So I'm so curious about, as the demographic seems, at least on the surface, to really have gotten a lot younger with this embrace of dark liquors and just more, ambitious cocktails in general. When did that start to really happen? When did the age start going down? Unless I'm completely mistaken about that.
I don't know if I'm the best source on that, seeing as how I'm kind of part of that. I think I came up in writing about food and drink since 2015 as part of that perhaps youthful movement. But I think you're exactly right that there is. I think it goes along with the huge growth of cultural interest in food and drink generally. Right. So you can't count yourself as a knowledgeable modern citizen if you don't know the next hot spot and everything about the food that's on your plate and what's in your glass.
Yeah.
But, I do think that cocktails have brought in a younger crowd to restaurants. And so, I think all of the bars, like in San Francisco, Trick Dog and all those are obviously geared toward the younger drinker. But yet they all use high quality ingredients. They do something that goes beyond, just the martini with 2 olives. And I think that kind of has intrigued the younger generation.
Yeah. I'm curious, before we go on to our next drink, Greg, with the old fashioned in particular, because it's something I love to prepare. My husband loves them. Sugar cube versus simple syrup. I noticed you did the simple syrup. Do you have any strong feelings about that? I'm always curious what bartenders think about the technical part of the drink.
Yeah, well, we're talking about what's popular, and the old fashioned really has kind of emerged as one of the most popular drinks. If you go a few years back, it would be maybe a Moscow Mule. A few years before that, it would be the Mojito was very popular, and then it was the Cosmo before that. So when we're just working with the expediency of what's going to dissolve more quickly, and that's why we go right to the simple syrup when we're in a bar environment. If you're if you're doing a ritual, like from the look of your tiki bar right there, it's, you know, you might sort of take your time doing something. I think a sugar cube muddled is a cool way to go about making one. It just takes a bit longer, and that's really the difference. But in the end, it's still a great drink either way you do it. And there's a little bit of a debate about what the garnish should be in an old fashioned.
That was my next technical question.
Right. So technically it is a lemon peel and an orange peel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then there is a whole sort of era where people thought you should muddle an orange wedge along with a cherry. Most of us are not doing that anymore. We're going over the big ice cube, and often we're serving it with just the orange twist, not the orange and the lemon twist. But I think around Brooklyn, like if you get into Clover Club, Julie Reiner will probably tell you it's got to be both twists, the lemon and the orange.
Okay, it means I need more fruit on hand at all times. All right, so let's go on. I think our next one is going to be the Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So for the Manhattan, we had a few different great choices of whiskey. And I know from the article, St. George was in there, the Bauer whiskey, which is fantastic. For this, we picked up the Spirit Works rye, being a Manhattan, we wanted to get rye in the recipe. And then we're also using the sweet vermouth from the Alta article from Oso de Oro. So I'm going to get that going here. Got my mixing glass, and there's a couple of different bottlings of the rye. We'll see the general rye right there. And then we've also got a little bit of a more special single cask bottling. So we're going to use that as a treat. We get 2 ounces of the rye whiskey in my mixing glass. While I have it, little orange bitters.
Nice.
And a little Angostura bitters.
Okay, so 2 kinds of bitters.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're going for that, all the flavor we can get in there. And there we go.
What? Vermouth. And what exactly is vermouth for those who don't know?
Well, yeah, vermouth. Vermouth is, the word means wormwood, and it's a infusion of wormwood and usually a lot of other aromatics, and usually a fortified red or a white wine. But primarily, it's the presence of the wormwood herb plant infused into the wine. And Oso de Oro has it in spades. Like if you pick up this, this is one of the most wormwood forward vermouths I've ever tasted. I don't know if Nick agrees, but that's what I found with this one. It's like,
I trust your palate.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get 1.5 ounces of that in there. And just get some ice up into it. Stir, get it cold. So yeah, the Oso de Oro is quite a bit different. If you're used to French vermouths and Italian vermouths, it's not quite as sweet as those other ones, even though it's billed as sweet. But it's got a really, it really does taste like California to me. It's very kind of dry and sagey. It's like a walk in the trails above LA.
Scrubby? Are you suggesting scrubby as a new adjective for
It is kind of scrubby.
Scrubby. And this is made Nick, is this one's in Gaviota? Is that right?
I know they source everything from around Santa Barbara. But
Okay.
I'm not. I mean, I know that they do a lot of stuff
Scrubby.
from the Hollister Ranch, which is in that area.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure where exactly the distillery is located. But yeah, I mean, you're right on with the sage. You know, I think I noted a few other botanicals sort of from the area in the piece, but definitely a more creative sweet vermouth that you need to tinker with a little bit to get right in a cocktail. So
Yeah, I was in college in Santa Barbara, and so now it's really coming together. Those flavors and aromas are really taking me back. So here, this Spirit Works Rye Manhattan with Oso de Oro vermouth.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Right, and if you're working from the bottle that you've been delivered,
Ooh.
you just pour this over ice and drink it like that. So it's compared to a lot of other Manhattans, it's going to be a little more bitter, and that's the high wormwood vermouth that we've got going on.
I like this a lot. It's really good.
It's really flavorful. Tell us a little bit more, Michael or Nick, about this whiskey, about Spirit Works.
okay, yeah. So they are up in Sebastopol. You know, the whiskey that's in the piece, I think, is different than the one that's in the kit. You know, Greg was talking about the rye, which they also make an excellent rye, and the 4-grain bourbon is what is in the original piece. So in either case, they use a lot of California grains. The rye, I think they get from Canada, but they use corn and wheat from the Sacramento Valley for their bourbon, and some Midwestern barley. So they're in the region. Yeah, I mean, they are another sort of piece, another possible way you can build a distillery. Basically, it's a husband and wife team, Timo and Ashby Marshall, along with their head distiller, Crystal Goulart. Crystal, I'm sorry if I mangled your name. And they've really done a great job of building a distillery team that can put out some great spirits. You know, they got a lot of good press for it's a female-led distillery team, which is more and more common. Hopefully someday will not even be worth remarking upon. And they really just know their stuff. They make good whiskey, really bright, really energetic whiskeys.
So I feel like in terms of whiskeys or Scotch, St. George is kind of the better known, right? Like they've got a single malt in particular that's really great. Michael, I think you've said you're a fan of that before.
Right. And the Terroir gin, I love their Terroir gin.
They've also got this one we have here is it's called B&E, Breaking and Entering. That's like one of their first whiskeys that they came out with. But their Lance is he's such an incredible distiller. I can't say enough good things about these guys. Love everything they do.
Nick, do you have
been there since about the first, hasn't he? I think he took over in 2010 from Jorg Ruff.
That's right. Oh, thank you for pronouncing. I was going to butcher his name too, so I'm glad.
I butchered it. I just pretended what we're talking about.
No. I mean, for some context, so Jorg was a German immigrant. He's very familiar with all these fruit brandies out of the Black Forest. I think I'm getting this right. Mm-hmm. Comes to California, distills all of the amazing fruits of California, and really starts this distillery that now Lance Winters, really runs the show, and they have proven that you can really distill anything. I think even on the website they mentioned that Lance once distilled a Christmas tree. When your imagination is broad enough. But no, they also make an excellent single malt, and are really pushing for the recognition of American single malt as a category, just by their sheer quality. So,
and their absinthe is really good too.
I have not had their absinthe. I need to have their absinthe.
Again, I love doing comparison. So, assuming that all three of you have drank and enjoyed Scotch, Scotch from Scotland, or maybe even the peatier, Islay. I went on a Scotch tasting trip in Islay years ago, and right? You got off the boat and the entire island just smells like smoking peat. I mean, the entire island is just like it's just in a bath of Scotch. How would you put California whiskeys in the pecking order in terms of taste for someone who's maybe a little bit more used to a Kentucky, bourbon or traditional Scotch, or even an Irish whiskey? What would you? Is there anything that's really different about the profile?
Maybe Greg should answer that. He probably
Yeah.
knows.
Yeah.
You're
Well, I mean, one of the ways the first thing that comes to mind is actually a brewer who's seminal in the craft brew movement, Anchor, Fritz Maytag, who also went down the path, like followed his curiosity into distilling. And while he made a gin, he also decided before brown spirits really like crested a wave over the country in the early 2000s. In the 90s, he decided he wanted to make a rye. And Fritz Maytag's he's a real just kind of he picks a course and he just follows it, and that's what he did with Anchor. And he did this with this rye, which when I talk about hodling, when we first tasted it, it was really hot, really harsh, but yet interesting. And I think it was the first rye whiskey produced outside of the traditional Eastern, like Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Baltimore. And he just did it because he wanted to do it. But it really did feel like it took about 8 or 9 years before that whiskey really became exceptional. And that's the thing that I think is going on in every state, and it's happening here in California. It's like we're blessed that all these distillers have gotten into making grain spirit and aging it in barrels. Lance and Anchor, they have kind of a head start, and their whiskey is getting better and better. And just like in Scotland, same things. Age makes brown spirits what it is. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen a few years down the road as all these other whiskeys just improve and improve and improve.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting point that Greg makes, because Fritz Maytag really kickstarted the beer movement with Anchor Steam. So you have California really at the center at both the whiskey and the beer.
Interesting. Yeah. And
As
he's got
coffee and a lot of other things.
Yeah. I had no idea about the coffee, and he's also just got the greatest name ever. I mean, that's just the best. I'm curious, Greg, you being there in a bar, which is how recently did you reopen? Or
yeah, we're partially open right now, so
okay.
We're still like, some of the drinks that you guys got, like this is sort of what we're serving. We're delivering these around San Francisco. And so still, we're just kind of a hybrid, but we're slated to be fully open on the 15th. So hopefully things keep going in the right direction. San Francisco did a pretty good job of keeping COVID numbers low. We've, kept the lights on, just selling bottled cocktails. But yeah, we're looking forward to welcoming people in to a full bar when we can kind of get back to it.
Nick and Michael, I'm curious, like, how do you see this all panning out post-pandemic with drinks and bars? I mean, both, how long is it going to take folks to get comfortable with, going back and sitting, next to someone in a crowded bar? And also just look at how we're doing this right now. And I've been on, I'm sure all of you have too, like many Zoom happy hours with friends and colleagues, like this way of coming together in this very odd, fashion. And as we also, are moving so much more toward, it looks like many companies, a more permanent remote or hybrid workspace, like whether the happy hour, the actual like that incredibly important coming of age, as you're in a workplace to get together with your colleagues. So it's a big question. But what are you seeing? What are you thinking?
I mean, ironically, I think it'll be the younger generation who will go into the bars first. So I think that's going to further what we were talking about the younger generation. But I think, I think that what Greg is doing, the batch cocktails, I think those are kind of here to stay too. And I think that's kind of an outgrowth of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Are those? Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
No, please.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask Greg, like, do you see those as being something that are here to stay? And as a bar owner, is that something you're excited about? Like, is that a good thing for you?
Yeah, I mean, if we really do hope that that the laws allow for it to continue. The feedback that we've gotten from everyone we've been able to deliver to in the last 12 months is that they would like it to continue, and it's essential for us. It's like another revenue stream for small businesses that really kind of need things like this. When you're faced with not being able to use your space in order to make ends meet, you need to find ways to bring what you have out to the customer. So yeah, we really do hope it continues, and we're sort of planning on meeting that need if possible.
Yeah, Nick, what have you been reporting, I know, on this, and Eater's been very active on charting the plight of restaurant and bar owners and eaters, obviously. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say first off that bars have had it rough compared to restaurants, just in that the restrictions, requiring to sell food, keeping them closed at different times when restaurants are open. And I think a lot of it, as Greg mentions, the future hangs on how legal it will be to continue some of these pandemic allowances, the to-go cocktails, which are, I believe, have passed the state Senate and are waiting on the House and Newsom. But we'll see how that. I assume that will break well for the bars, but we'll see. The same goes for distilleries. Distilleries have always sort of had short shrift compared to wineries and breweries. It took the Craft Spirits Act to get them to be able to sell directly to customers and to offer food. I think we're gonna see a similar thing coming out of this. They only during the pandemic have been allowed to sell craft distillers to sell directly to customers. And that's really helpful with. I'm not sure if it's both selling directly and third parties like Drizzly, but I mean that's a huge boon to business. So we'll see if that sort of continues. If the alcoholic beverage control, allows them to keep doing that coming out of this. But more broadly, your question, what happens to the culture of drinking? I think it's going to be a mixed bag. I don't think the Zoom happy hour is going anywhere. I think that's going to stick around. I think Greg, you're going to be leading a lot of events like this into the future if you desire it. I think we're going to have a very mixed in-person, digital, direct delivery, going out atmosphere.
So Nicholas, that's interesting. You think the Zoom cocktail hour will remain? I kind of think it's going to go by the wayside pretty quickly.
I think given remote workplaces, increasingly remote workplaces, companies will continue to see it as a way to sort of inspire team bonding. Sending out kits, their own kits. I mean, my brother-in-law works at a major law firm, and he gets all the time these bundles of snacks and drinks and that sort of thing that sort of gives some cohesion to people who are geographically remote from one another. So,
yeah. This is not my forte, but right now simultaneously we have a parallel event going on with a tech company for 12 people learning how to make Mai Tais and pina coladas. So I do see, and we have while it's tapered off a little bit or quite a bit as things open up, there is this notion that things are continuing this way. And another one besides tech companies, surprisingly, private schools have been using the online happy hour, the online cocktail making kind of ritual to bond with staff and parent teacher organizations, which has been really amusing and cool, here in our world.
It's really funny. I'm so curious, Michael. You're someone who spent so much time in restaurants in this last year and a half. You've probably spent the least amount of time in restaurants that you've ever have in your adult life, I would guess. So both, what do you, because drinking is so much a part of going out to eat. And I was really interested in what you said earlier about younger people coming in for cocktails really help the demographic of younger people just eating at restaurants in general. So are you hopeful about that too, as we move forward? Like what are you excited about with all of us coming out of the pandemic for what's ahead for restaurants and drinking?
I think what the pandemic has done is made people appreciate restaurants more than they ever did before, and kind of not take them for granted. So I'm hoping what it'll mean is that customers will be a little nicer, and that there'll be a little more understanding about what a restaurant is going through.
That's really a great point. It looks like you are getting our third drink set up. I'm thinking here, Greg. Yes.
Yeah. Are you ready for a third drink?
Yeah, sure. Let's get we'll get the Negroni moving.
Yeah, so our third drink is a Negroni, an LA Negroni, based with a mass gin. And we're, again, turning back to the Oso de Oro vermouth for our other component. And then check your bottle. Can you see what it says on it? Does it say Lo-Fi Gentian Amaro?
It does.
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. All right. Initially, we had conceived it with another California product called Amaro Angelino, but we switched up to the Lo-Fi. It wasn't in the article, but also a California artisanal vermouth product, and that's this.
Okay, great. And Nick and Michael, and Greg, I assume you all have seen the Stanley Tucci video of making a Negroni. That was a bit of a viral hit a few months ago. Okay, so what did you all think of it? Did you approve of his technique? And Michael and Nick and
I didn't see it. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, okay. So Nick, did you see it?
I did see it. I'm not gonna pick apart the techniques because I think you should make a drink however you want to make it at home. If Stanley Tucci wants to make me a Negroni, I will happily accept it. Let me put it that way.
So Greg, how is yours going to be anything like Stanley's, or are you going off the?
I don't know. Like if I recall, I think what it was is that it's like he stirred it in the up glass or no, he shook it. Oh my God, yeah. I love that guy, and his show is amazing. I love Italy, and I think he really nailed that. Kind of in a way, like people are saying, he kind of took the baton from Anthony Bourdain, and anyway, he's one of my favorites. But yeah, don't shake your Negronis. I'm not going to shake this.
Okay.
There's another cocktail legend who passed away a couple of years named Gary Regan, and he was known for a finger stirred Negroni. And this is just a guy who's he was a Chronicle contributor. He wrote the Cocktailian, and this is sort of an image of him. That's Gary Regan, right there.
Okay. Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Kind of looks like me right now with my COVID beard. But yeah, Gary was a character, and when you were like endeared to him, he would make you a finger stirred Negroni with his own index finger. So to Nick's point, at home, whatever works for you,
that's good. Yeah.
Go with it. So without further ado, let's make a Negroni.
Yeah.
He was, I think Gary was so infamous for that at one point. I'm trying to remember which company released a bar spoon with the spoon in the shape modeled after his finger. So you could literally stir it with his finger.
That's fantastic.
All right, we're going equal parts. 1 ounce of a mass gin. This is by itself. I noticed like the botanicals are just like real forward in this. Just a lot of flavors besides just the traditional juniper that you get out of a London dry gin, but it's really nice. All right, now we're gonna get the lo-fi gentian amaro in there. What's fun about the lo-fi products is that, you know, in California, you've got two types of liquor licenses. There's beer and wine licenses, and there's full liquor licenses. Well, amaros are super popular in every bar, but you can't get most amaros in a beer and wine license establishment. But this one you can, because it's wine-based and it qualifies for a beer and wine establishment. So you get kind of that's like a Campari substitute or an Amaro substitute in this version of the LA Negroni. Lastly, keep putting my.
And Nick, the gin is an LA made gin, isn't it?
Right. So my understanding is that Amass is sort of a roving distiller. I think their newest bottle actually takes inspo and botanicals from the Northwest. But this bottle is very much centered on LA. Again, you know, it gives us another sort of view into what a California distillery can be, or a distillery focused on California. In that master distiller Morgan McLaughlin, you know, it's very interesting the way that she plays in this brand. Not only she's very skilled, but I remember seeing her on Into the Gloss. So she has sort of like crossover appeal. You know, they really promote sort of like a lifestyle in the way that some brands do, really, you know, say that this gin takes after Los Angeles. Sorry, Michael, this one's for me. I'm from LA. Yeah. So take that for what you will.
Yeah. Well, as we do our cheers here, I am curious how important is terroir in California spirits?
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's not only what gives your product flavor, you know, not only what takes you back to your college days, Greg, but you know, what gives you your identity. You know, if you tie yourself not only to California but to specific regions. Oh, it's a beautiful drink.
So, yeah, that is very pretty. A lot more full than mine. Yeah.
When I tried the terroir gin for the first time, I felt like I was driving through the Presidio with all the eucalyptus trees and all the herbal flavors that come from that.
That, Michael, that was the perfect description. It's absolutely beautiful.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Never had that. That's so good. I'm not a big gin drinker in general.
Talking about.
I'm curious. Oh. Two questions that I want to ask you all before we open this up to questions, because I think that's going to rejoin us just in a second. Nick and Michael and Greg, I don't know if this is a fair question for you, but we'll try it. If you are at home and you're mixing yourself a drink, what's the drink that you're going to mix? What's your go-to drink?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. At home, I think this is true of maybe a lot of bartenders, is the Negroni blueprint. So if I have tequila and I have a bitter like Campari, but also there's several others that are great, and some vermouth, I'm gonna have a tequila Negroni, or I'm going to have a whiskey Negroni, a Boulevardier. It's, you know, or an old fashioned, but yeah, something like that you can just kind of sip over a long period of time. You know, I think maybe cooks are this way. It's like you don't want to spend a lot of time making food when that's what you do for a living. So in drinking, I think we've all seen the movie Pulp Fiction. Kill Bill. Kill Bill Volume 2. There's a character who lives in a trailer, and he makes a margarita. And the way he makes it is like he grabs with his hand, just like throws the ice into the blender and just like slops it around. That's how I make drinks at home.
By the way, I think this is a great Negroni. I love the herbaceous aspects of it.
This is the most botanical of all the drinks I think,
I
Michael.
really like it. You know, I do often a cocktail when I have people over, a lot of people, like a big batch, which was based on a Gary Regan drink, and I called it the Tangerine Kiss, but it's like one part of Meyer lemon vodka, and I buy like Smirnoff and infuse, Meyer lemon from my trees in it, and one part of Campari and 2 parts of fresh tangerine juice.
And that's a good big
If-
mix drink. Like
if- Yeah, I mean, I've done it individually, but I like to make it in a big punch bowl.
okay, we'll definitely
I
include
haven't done
that.
it in a year and a half though.
Can we name it the Bauer
I
Tangerine?
call it the Tangerine Kiss.
Oh, the Tangerine Kiss. Yes. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, well, we will definitely include that recipe when we send the recipes around to everyone. And how about you, Nick?
I would say it definitely depends on the night.
Okay.
I bounce around a lot. I do a lot of, sort of Boilermaker like things. But go-to would have to be a daiquiri all the time. Love me a good daiquiri.
Okay.
I'm a big rum drinker these days, and sharp-eyed readers will notice in my piece I did not include a California rum. I wanted to. There's actually a perfect opportunity for me to call out Shadow Ridge Distillery down in San Diego. I was originally going to feature Sean Holman. He's a Navy vet. He actually does a Navy strength rum, sort of in his own style, and I love that. I love that it's not about British, colonial Navy strength rum. It's like a new American Navy strength rum. It's so cool. It was so popular, it was sold out. So I went with his rye, which is also excellent. Yeah, daiquiris all day, every day.
Look at that. That came out of left. I wouldn't have called that one on you, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
Oh,
I like
yeah.
that.
It's a perfect drink.
I like that. So Beth, do you want to join us? And I know we have some questions from our audience. Hello.
We do.
I'd say
But first of all,
one thing that kind of shows how far we've come.
Yeah, please.
Back in the 60s, my parents used to have all these parties, and they would let me, I was like 5 or 6 years old, and they would let me, or I probably 8 or 10, they'd let me make the whiskey sours. And the way that they made them was 1 can of frozen lemonade, 1 can of bourbon, and fill the blender with ice, and then you turn it on high.
That's
That was the
fantastic.
whiskey
That
sour.
doesn't sound bad. That doesn't sound
Actually, it was really good.
bad.
I started drinking very early.
A kid-friendly whiskey sour. I like that.
it's kind of like a frosé, like a
Anyway, sorry about that.
hurricane.
That's so funny. No, whiskey sours are great. I'm gonna have to try that.
Well, and now all I can see is Nick with his pina colada. Nick, when you make the pina colada, do you do the decor? Do you have like the flair on
Garnish.
it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, a proper daiquiri, very minimalist. It's a classic balanced drink, same as a margarita, just perfect as it is. I don't even put the lime wedge because when I serve it to other people, I don't want them messing with the citrus balance. I did it right. Don't mess with it.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, Nick's revealing like where the bar community is 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, if you tried to figure out if somebody's applying for a job as a bartender, you'd say, what's in a Negroni? 12 years ago, you'd say, what's in a Sazerac? Now you say, make me a daiquiri. And if they can make you a daiquiri and they do it right, then they're showing that they understand the nuance. The daiquiri is the darling of the bartender inside of thing. It's almost rivaling Fernet Branca as far as like being like a bartender handshake that you're into bars.
Wow.
Why is that?
Wow.
Yeah, maybe Nick knows.
You can't hide. You can't hide in a daiquiri.
Yeah.
You got to do it right. You got to have
roast
a
chicken,
balance.
huh?
And it's delicious.
Yeah, and it's always delicious. It's always delightful. It's a daiquiri.
Yeah, Jim
Delicious,
Meehan, so
delightful.
Jeff Bell's mentor, he kind of indicates that is that the thing about the daiquiri is that it does highlight precision, because unlike a margarita, if you get one little thing wrong, if you shake it not long enough or too long, if you don't get the right amount of citrus to sweetener balance, it'll show. And that's why it's a good test of a bartender's skill, like where you need them to be. And then it's like you can identify, oh, well, this person's got potential, but we just need to speed up their shake and make sure they do it for 10 seconds, that sort of thing. So it is a simple thing. In a way, maybe it's like a very sort of, Zen kind of idea, but that's what I've heard. That's what people are writing about.
So
Well,
not
yeah.
the daiquiri out of the thing like this. Like with
No.
Well, those are great too. No, you get a frozen daiquiri, you're next level. It's,
from
yeah,
Great America.
different skill.
Nick, we're gonna want your daiquiri recipe too if
Yeah,
you're willing to
someone's
give it up.
I need all of these recipes, by the
Uh-huh.
way. So everyone who's watching, we're gonna send an email to you tomorrow with all of these recipes. Greg, you're going to send me the recipes you made tonight. Nick, will you please send us? Will you, if you're willing to share that?
Very straightforward, but I'm happy to share it.
Okay, great. And then Mary, you didn't answer the question. What is your go-to cocktail when you've wrapped an issue of Alta?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, ideally my go-to cocktail would be sitting at the bar at Musso Frank having a vodka martini.
Nice.
Yeah, that's my,
All of
that's,
the swi-
you know, I go back and forth. I'm happy with either one. It depends on my mood. It's like Nick was saying, depends on the day. I can go either way. Olive always feels a little dirtier, so that's just a thing. But oh yeah, with that little extra thing of it on the side, it's just the best.
Right. Did you say gin martini or vodka martini?
I'm sorry. I prefer vodka because I feel like most purists say I should like gin better. But I said I'm not much of a gin drinker, but I think that this gin tonight is going to ease me into gin a little bit more. I'm more of a vodka drinker than a gin.
Is the Musso and Frank, do they give you a little like extra on the side?
You bet they do. Yeah.
A little sidecar.
Yeah. Yeah. You will fall off your chair at Musso Frank from one because one is basically three. Yeah.
Speaking of three, which you've all had tonight, we're getting a question here, and I think this is for Greg, but I think that, you know, you may all have some advice on this. Mixing boozes. Given that we're moving from an old fashioned to a Manhattan, and Negroni, what's your take on mixing liquors and drinks throughout an evening? Isn't there a rhyme? There's like a little poem about it.
Beer before liquor. Couldn't be
Wine before liquor.
Something.
Okay, well, anyway.
Michael, I'm curious about this, particularly with you, because you're having been out to eat so much and different, you know, starting with a cocktail and then having wine and then an after drink, you know, potentially. I've been out with restaurant critics many times eating. Like, would you have any philosophy about mixing drinks?
The only one I've heard is, and this is more, you know, before I was in a proprietor, but it's liquor before wine, you're fine. So it's like end with wine, you're fine. Wine before liquor, never sicker. But I don't believe it. I think it's just, it's sort of cumulative. I think in all candor, a lot of people who I talk to believe that if they consume straight tequila, that they say things like they don't get hangovers and things. And there's been, in the past, there was like ultra quadruple distilled vodka that erroneously was saying that you won't get a hangover if you drink this particular spirit because we're taking out all the impurities. But, you know, there is a little something to perhaps the complexity of, like, you look at the difference between grappa or a lot of American whiskeys and Scottish whiskeys versus tequila versus gin versus vodka. Yeah, probably between sugars and a lot of other elements, you could be doing yourself not a favor long term. But, you know, moderation, that's important. But the order with which you consume, I go back and forth personally. I start with wine, I go to liquor, maybe back to wine, then to water. Definitely make sure you drink water before you turn in.
Because I don't get a hangover from tequila.
There, see, that's what people are saying.
Yeah.
I do get a hangover.
Yeah, I do get. I was gonna say I don't really drink tequila because I can't. It doesn't. Yeah.
I thought people drank tequila because it had like very little calories, and it's like a.
They say it's
Real
in the upper.
Housewives are ordering a lot of tequila.
Well, it's got great flavor and maybe possibly the same calories as vodka. So people that are concerned about calories, they think that vodka is going to be one of the lowest calorie things they can imbibe. And I'm always trying to get people to say, well, yes, but let's have a little more flavor. And we don't need to add calories. You can enjoy some other subtle flavors.
But Greg, is it true that tequila is the only upper alcohol?
The only upper. Oh, like it.
It's the only one. Every
I've heard that too, Michael.
alcohol is a depressant, except tequila is supposed to be an upper.
Well,
Is that true?
that's something people say, and yeah, it's like a different kind of buzz. But you know, if there's science, I don't think so. It's just
Dr. Greg.
I'm with Greg on this one.
It's
I
the
think
beard.
I think it's all
The
I think it's all
lies
right
people
here.
tell themselves. Yes.
Yeah.
Are there California-based tequila companies?
that's tough.
That's an interesting question. No, because tequila can only be made in Mexico, but there are some companies trying to make agave spirits, because agave does grow in California perfectly well. Limited experiment so far, but I mean, Greg, maybe you've seen some more stuff on this than I have. I know La Ventura, down south, was making an agave spirit. I think they're like transitioning, but I think it's one of the nice frontiers. We'll see if anybody can sort of capitalize on it, but it's hard. It's really hard.
I think it's a good idea, and that we have to respect the tequila region and not do what we did to France and, call things champagne when they're sparkling wine. So we should distill agave and grow it, because our region we are Alta California. Did you ever have the Charbet tequila? So Marco Karasevic, who also is a great distiller of whiskeys, his process is pretty interesting. But he was getting a bottling of tequila that was made down in Tequila, and it was labeled under Charbet tequila. It was so good. I believe it was Tapatio is what was in the bottle, but it was fantastic. They're not still doing it. They discontinued about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know if Michael ever got to see that, but so you had this California label, a reputable California distiller, but of course respecting like where it was from was the region tequila.
Yeah, and we see a number of those partnerships actually, of California distilleries bringing tequila up from Mexico and then aging it and producing it under their own labels. So those sorts of partnerships can be really fruitful for both sides.
Yeah.
Final question, I guess, for everyone here. Now that bars are opening back up again, you're allowed to drink in places that don't serve food necessarily, and an answer cannot be any of Greg's bars. So you can't say Rye or 15 Romolo. Greg, do you have another bar?
Where I want to go? Oh yeah, the Cordial.
Is that your bar?
It's mine.
Okay, so you can't say the Cordial. You can't. None of Greg's bars can be on your list. But where, other than Greg's bars, where will be the first place you go to get a really solid cocktail in California? Mask off.
I would go to a restaurant because that's what I know. And restaurants, it's interesting, before like 2000, you always rated it on the wine. And after 2000, just about every restaurant had to have a full license. And so it was the cocktails. And so I would go to a place like Bayota and have one of their gin tonics.
Okay. Nick, you're in New York, but you're an LA guy. So
I am. The next time I get back to LA, as soon as I can get back to LA. Mary, I would love to meet you for a martini at Musso and Frank's, because that sounds great right now in this sweltering Brooklyn summer night. I just want that so bad.
And you want the little carafe of backup.
Oh yeah, the sidecar. I want all of it. I want the servers in the outfits and the red vinyl. Yeah, all of it.
Greg, when you're going to a bar that you don't own, where are you gonna go next?
I actually got to do this last week. I'm going to give it a shout out to my friend David Ruiz. Has a wonderful bar up in Fairfax, California called Stillwater, and it's a nice little restaurant bar. But Dave comes from the bar world. It's more of a bar that serves food than a restaurant with a good bar, if you will. And here in San Francisco, and I think Brooklyn's similar too, like we locked down so hard, but then when you get out to the burbs, you see that like with low COVID numbers and like a lot of outdoor space, like there was a lot of sort of like the weight of the world just falls away. And what California has so much in abundance when we're not like in wildfire season is like just beautiful weather and great outdoor climate. And that's what Fairfax and Stillwater brings. And the cocktails are awesome.
Okay, these are great recommendations. Again, we will add them to this list. I have a lot to compile tonight with these recipes, these brands, recommendations. And I'm going to put it all together. Again, this is being recorded. So if you had to leave early, if you came late, if you want to rewatch this again and drink all the drinks again, we won't judge you. Do it tonight. I will get this up on Alta Online as soon as possible. Send you all the links by tomorrow. I am also next week. Please join us. We're gonna take total 180 and discuss sustainable housing back at our usual 12:30 on Wednesday time. So please do join us for that with leading architects and kind of these super efficient houses. Again, another thing that California is kind of leading the way on. So that's Wednesday, June 2nd, right here at altaonline.com. I am so super grateful to, of course, my colleague, Mary Melton, Nicholas Mancall-Bitel, my friend, Michael Bauer, and the wonderful and talented Greg Lindgren. Thank you all so much for joining us. I hope no one has anywhere to drive to tonight. And thanks again. Join us next time and we'll see you soon. Stay safe. Cheers.
Thank you all. Cheers. Thanks, Greg. Can't wait
Thanks,
to see you, Mars.
everyone.